I stood in the foyer of the house I had just bought, the house I had spent 8 years scrimping and saving for. A beautiful home worth $965,000, located in the suburbs of Seattle, with 5 bedrooms, 4 bathrooms, and a spacious living room flooded with natural light. I had dreamed of this day for so long. The day I would finally have a place to call my own, but that dream was being threatened from the very first moment. My mother crossed her arms, her tone as if she were making an obvious decision. "Lily will take the master bedroom. You can stay in the basement. After all, you're always at work anyway." I clenched my fists, trying to stay calm. "But I bought this house." I emphasized each word. "Every single dollar came from my savings." Lily, my younger sister, leaned against the stair railing, her blue eyes sparkling as she feigned indifference. "Oh, don't be so selfish, Olivia. You know I need the space to grow my beauty brand. The lighting in the master bedroom is perfect for filming videos. Don't you want to help me?" I took a deep breath. In my 31 years of life, I had become accustomed to being the one pushed aside, always sacrificing for Lily. As a child, I wore her hand-me-downs, even when they no longer fit. In high school, my parents used my college savings to fund Lily's fashion design course, a course she dropped after 3 months because it didn't align with her creative vision. I was used to my family always making excuses for Lily, justifying her failures, while I had to fend for myself. I worked multiple jobs throughout college, graduated from medical school with enormous student loans, then spent 8 grueling years as a resident, before finally securing a position as a neurosurgeon at Seattle Grace Hospital. And now, in the very house I had bought with my own hard-earned money, they were deciding who got to live where. My father sat by the large window, where the sunlight highlighted the silver strands in his hair. "You have to understand, Olivia. Lily is going through a career transition. Her beauty brand is about to take off. She just needs a little support to succeed." I tightened my grip on my bag, frustration rising in my chest. Like when she opened her art studio? Or when she trained to be a makeup artist? Or last year's yoga instructor certification? Or her handmade cosmetics business that shut down after 2 months? Lily pouted. "You always love criticizing me, but at least I have passion and don't give up. That's what matters." I didn't want to argue. I knew that if I continued, the conversation would only turn into them painting me as the cold-hearted sister who refused to help her family. My mother glanced around the house, her eyes lighting up as she mentally divided the space. "The basement has a separate entrance, which is very convenient for you. You can come and go without disturbing anyone. It's perfect for your work schedule." I didn't respond. Instead, I quietly pulled out my phone and texted Rachel, my best friend and the real estate lawyer who had helped me close on the house. "They're doing it again. Time to implement Plan B." She replied immediately. "That fast? All right, let them keep pushing. You're fully prepared." 6 months ago, when I told Rachel I planned to buy this house for my family, she warned me. "You know, Olivia, Lily is going to try and take over. If you don't have protections in place, you'll lose all control." I didn't want to believe it. I wanted to think my family wouldn't take advantage of me that much. But I wasn't naive enough to leave everything unprotected. So Rachel and I drafted a legal contract. One that ensured I would have the final say in this house. A contract my family had never seen. My mother turned to me, smiling as if everything had been settled. "All right, sweetheart, that's decided then." I slid my phone back into my pocket, offering a small smile. "Yes, Mom, that's decided." They had no idea that in just a few weeks they would realize this was not their house to control. I had spent my entire life giving in, but this time would be different. 3 weeks later, my house had seemingly transformed into Lily's personal stage. Boxes of beauty products labeled Lily Rose cluttered the hallway. A few days ago, she even asked our parents to help her put up shimmering wallpaper in the master bedroom as a backdrop for her videos. I walked into the living room, which now looked like a makeshift studio. Ring lights pointed at the couch, tripods stood everywhere, and the coffee table was covered in bottles of serums, creams, and endless rows of lipstick samples. "You don't mind, do you?" Lily asked when she saw me. She was adjusting the angle of her phone, holding a compact highlighter in her hand. "I have a big live stream later to launch my new product. The brand is sponsoring it, so it needs to look professional." I crossed my arms, surveying the scene. "So that means you've started earning money from your brand?" Lily blinked, momentarily flustered. Not exactly, but I have so much potential. If this live stream goes well, I might get a contract with them." My father, who was leisurely sitting in his chair reading the newspaper, chimed in. "Sweetheart, you don't always have to be so serious. Your sister is trying. Can't you support her just a little?" I let out a dry laugh. "Oh, of course. Just like how the family has supported me all these years." My father pretended not to hear me. Day by day, Lily expanded her occupation of the house. She turned the living room into her filming space, the master bedroom into a product storage room, and the dining area into a strategy meeting space for her social media content creator friends. They came to my house constantly, discussing new trends, live streaming for hours, and frequently leaving a mess behind. The breaking point was one weekend night when I came home after a long surgery and found over 20 strangers gathered in my living room. Lily, dressed in an elegant evening gown, stood in the center of the room with a wine glass in hand. "Oh, you're home?" she beamed. "I organized a small networking event for the content creator community. We have to expand the brand, right?" I scanned the room. Guests were laughing, taking selfies, and strolling around with their wine glasses. A group was lounging on my favorite white sofa, snacking while live streaming. On the dining table, there were countless bottles of expensive wine, the kind I had never purchased. "Lily," I said slowly, "this is my house. And did you ask me before organizing this event?" Lily let out a nervous chuckle. "Didn't you always say a home is meant to be enjoyed?" I just wanted to create a more creative space. I didn't respond. Instead, I pulled out my phone, opened my banking app. A transaction of nearly $650 appeared, paid from my card to an event service company. I took a deep breath, forcing down my anger. "Enjoy your night," I said, then walked straight to my office. But as I closed the door behind me, I knew that Plan B had to be executed immediately. The next morning, I sat in Rachel's office, exhaustion and frustration weighing on me. "This escalated faster than I expected," I said, shaking my head. "I had hoped they would at least have some self-respect." Rachel narrowed her eyes at me. "Did you really think that?" I sighed. "All right, no. But at least I wanted to give them a chance." Rachel pulled a stack of documents toward her. "Then it's time for the next step. Do you remember the clause we added to the contract?" I nodded. The property ownership agreement I signed before buying this house clearly stated that anyone living here for more than 30 days must sign a lease and contribute financially. Additionally, any commercial activities using the space must have my approval. If violated, the owner had the right to remove the occupant from the premises. Lily had no idea about that. I looked at Rachel, my voice firm. "Do it." Rachel nodded, picking up her pen and signing a few documents. "We'll send the official notice by the end of this week." When I got home, Lily was filming a video in the living room. The camera was pointed directly at me as I walked in. "And this is my sister, Dr. Olivia Lawrence," Lily said enthusiastically. "She's my daily inspiration. Do you want to say hi to my audience, sis?" I gave a small smile. "Of course." I looked straight into the camera. "I just want to say that some people are about to learn a very important lesson about homeownership." Lily laughed loudly, oblivious to the meaning behind my words. But in just a few days, she would understand. I sat down on the sofa in the living room, placing a stack of documents on the glass table in front of me. Across from me, my parents and Lily sat in the armchairs, their expressions puzzled. They still hadn't realized that tonight's family meeting was not a casual conversation. Rachel entered, closing the door behind her. She adjusted her gray blazer, placed her briefcase on the table, and took a seat. "Good evening, everyone," Rachel began, her tone calm yet firm. "I'm Rachel Carter, a real estate attorney." Olivia has asked me to be here to clarify some matters regarding the ownership and management of this property. My father frowned. Why do we need a lawyer for this? This is Olivia's house. But it's a family home. We're not strangers. Rachel gave a polite but pointed smile. Legally speaking, this is not a family home. This property is under the sole ownership of Olivia Lawrence. And today, we will be discussing the residency terms for this house. I opened the stack of documents and flipped to the first page. As you all know, I said, keeping my voice calm, I bought this house entirely with my own money. And before purchasing it, Rachel and I drafted a contract that clearly outlines who can live here and under what conditions. Lily crossed her arms and leaned back in her chair, her tone dripping with sarcasm. You're acting like we're just tenants. Rachel didn't give her a chance to argue further. She slid a contract toward them. According to the stated terms, any adult residing here for more than 30 days must sign a lease agreement. The rent is calculated based on the room's size and amenities used. I looked at Lily, then at my parents. That means if you want to continue living here, you have to pay rent and contribute to household expenses like electricity, water, and internet. Silence filled the room. My father was the first to break it. You're joking, right? No, Dad, I replied. I'm very serious. My mother shook her head, disbelief in her voice. Olivia, you're a neurosurgeon. You have more than enough money to support your family. Do you really want to nickel and dime your own parents? I took a deep breath, keeping my composure. I'm not nickel and diming anyone. I just want everyone to take responsibility. I can't keep covering everything while I'm the only one with a stable income in this house. Lily shot up from her chair. This is ridiculous. I'm a content creator. I'm building my brand. You can't expect me to pay rent like some office worker. Rachel leaned back, tapping her pen against the stack of documents. By law, if you don't have a legal source of income or a verified financial account, you cannot sign a lease agreement. If you don't sign, you have 30 days to vacate. Lily's mouth fell open, unable to believe what she was hearing. You're kicking me out of the house? I looked her straight in the eye. If you don't pay rent, then yes. The argument lasted over an hour. My parents took turns blaming, pleading, and eventually guilt-tripping. Lily cried, trying every possible way to make me feel bad, but this time, I did not give in. When they realized I wasn't changing my mind, my mother switched to bargaining. We can compromise, Olivia. Maybe Lily doesn't have to pay rent right now, but she can help around the house to make up for it. I shook my head. Lily has turned this house into her personal space, thrown parties, and used my credit card without permission. And now you think she can make up for it by doing chores? Lily clenched her fists. You're going to regret this. I simply stood up, picking up the documents from the table. You all have 30 days. If not, I will proceed with legal action. My father slammed his fist on the table. We're family, Olivia. You can't do this to your own family. I looked him straight in the eye. Family is not an excuse to take advantage of someone. 30 days later, my house was finally mine again. Lily and my parents had packed their bags. After weeks of trying to hold on, they realized I wasn't bluffing. They moved into a smaller apartment in the city. Not too far, but far enough for me to have the distance I needed. Without a luxury backdrop for her videos, Lily had no choice but to get a real job. I heard she was now working as a receptionist at a gym. The first job in her life that she had kept for more than a month. My parents no longer sent me guilt-tripping messages. They didn't acknowledge their mistakes, but at least they had stopped trying to manipulate me. That first night in my quiet home, I sat with a cup of hot tea. No more fake laughter from strangers, no more endless live streams in the middle of the night. Just me, and the peace I had fought to reclaim. 6 months later, I received a letter from Lily. Olivia, I've tried to write this letter so many times, but only now do I truly know what I need to say. I always thought you were heartless, but now I realize you were the only one who set the boundaries I needed. You helped me by refusing to help me unconditionally. I had to learn how to live without a safety net. And while it was harder than I ever imagined, I now understand it was necessary. Thank you for being stronger than me. Thank you for not giving in. I hope one day you can forgive me. Lily. I read the letter over and over, feeling a sense of relief for the first time. The next day, I sent a simple text. Let's grab coffee. We have a lot to talk about. I didn't know if my relationship with Lily could ever go back to what it was. But at least we had a fresh start, not from my unconditional sacrifice, but from her genuine growth. And to me, that was a worthwhile change. The Seattle sky was gray as I sat by the window, holding a warm cup of coffee. The house was quieter than ever. No more rowdy guests, no more late-night live streams, no more absurd charges on my credit card. The past 6 months had been the first time in my life I truly lived for myself. I walked around the house, feeling the clear transformation in every space. The living room was no longer overrun with tripods and fake backdrops. Instead, it held a cozy sofa and a bookshelf filled with my favorite novels. The kitchen was spotless, no longer bearing the aftermath of extravagant parties. The master bedroom was finally mine, just as it should have been from the start, and I felt no regret. Letting Lily and my parents leave wasn't just about reclaiming my space. It was a crucial lesson for all of us. I was no longer my family's personal ATM. I was no longer sacrificing my peace for relationships built on dependency and entitlement. I drove to the cafe where I had arranged to meet Lily. She had arrived early, sitting in a corner. There was no phone propped up for live streaming this time. The expensive silk dress was gone, replaced by a simple blouse. Her perfectly curled hair was now neatly tied back. When I sat down, she looked up and smiled. Not the performance smile for the camera, but a genuine one. You still drink unsweetened lattes, right? She pushed a cup toward me. I raised an eyebrow. You remember? I remember a lot of things, Lily sighed. I remember how much you tried to help me. I just never acknowledged it. I stayed silent, letting her continue. You were right, she murmured, staring into her coffee. I spent my whole life thinking someone would always be there to support me. When you weren't, I had to find my own way. And honestly, it wasn't easy at all. I looked at Lily and saw the change in her eyes. The girl who once believed she could always rely on others had now learned what it meant to be independent. Do you regret it? Lily asked after a moment of silence. Kicking me and Mom and Dad out? I shook my head. No. If I hadn't done it, you wouldn't have had the chance to truly grow. Lily let out a soft laugh. Maybe. I resented you so much, but now I'm grateful. I took a sip of my coffee, feeling a sense of relief. Lily was no longer the dependent little sister I once knew. She was still learning to stand on her own, but more importantly, she had started taking real steps forward. Can we start over? Lily asked, her eyes more sincere than ever. This time, as real sisters? I smiled. I'd really like that. Outside the window, the Seattle rain fell lightly, washing away the remnants of the past. I knew things would never go back to the way they were, but maybe, this time, they would be better. Olivia's story isn't just about a house or family conflicts. It's a lesson in boundaries, independence, and self-respect. In life, sometimes the best way to love someone isn't by constantly helping them, but by letting them take responsibility for their own life. Saying no isn't always easy, especially when it comes to family, but sometimes it's necessary for both sides to grow. Olivia didn't just reclaim her space, she helped her sister find her own path to self-sufficiency. What do you think about Olivia's decision? Was she too harsh, or was it necessary for her family to truly grow? Share your thoughts in the comments. Don't forget to follow the channel for more stories about life and family. I'm Charlotte, 24 years old, living in a small suburban town near Seattle. People often say passion must go hand in hand with reality. But for me, passion is what pulled me out of the suffocating reality of a family that never valued what I cherished. I've loved gaming since I was a little girl, barely reaching the edge of the couch, watching my cousin glued to the computer screen. But when I realized computers weren't just for fun but also a gateway to endless opportunities, I knew I had to build something of my own. No one else would do it for me, especially not in this family. For 3 years, I juggled college and every odd job I could find. Mornings as a library assistant on minimum wage, evenings freelancing banners and photo edits on an old laptop slower than a flat tire bike. Every birthday, every holiday, when others wished for new clothes or fancy trips, I wished for gift cards or cash. Every single dollar was saved for a dream that only I took seriously. Not everyone understood why I'd skip parties or luxury purchases just to get a graphics card. To me, it was the heart of my dream PC. A custom-built rig that cost me $2,800, where every part was hand-picked, bargain-hunted, and assembled down to the smallest screw. I'm not the type to brag, but seeing my work come alive on screen, hearing the quiet hum of the cooling fans after a finished project, I knew. This was the result of sweat, persistence, and countless sleepless nights. Thanks to that PC, my freelance gigs took off. From small jobs paying $200, I started landing recurring clients, working on banner designs for local brands. I never dreamed of getting rich overnight, but at least I earned enough to support myself, without begging anyone for help. That PC wasn't just a possession. It was my foundation, proof that I didn't need to sacrifice my dreams to please those who called me delusional. In a family where every gaze, every expectation was poured onto my younger sister Lauren, the golden child, quietly building my own path was the only way I could affirm my worth. Lauren is 3 years younger, but the gap between us feels like an abyss. While I worked tirelessly to support myself, Lauren lived like an uncrowned princess, always having red carpets rolled out beneath her feet. I lost count of how many times my parents used the excuse, "Lauren needs more," to take away what was meant for me. When I wanted to take an advanced design course, Mom shook her head. "Lauren's about to enter fashion school, and that's expensive. You'll have to wait till next year." The following year, it was, "Lauren needs funds for an internship in New York, so we'll postpone your plans again." And so, my dreams were indefinitely delayed, while Lauren's were nurtured like prized bonsai trees. I don't hate Lauren, but I hate how my parents turned favoritism into an unspoken household rule. Dad would always say, "You're the older sister. You should know how to give in." Give in? A word that sounds noble, but in our house, it meant abandoning anything I wanted, as long as Lauren was happy. I vividly remember my 20th birthday. I wasn't hoping for extravagant gifts, just a simple family dinner at my favorite pizza place from high school. But that very day, Lauren accidentally booked a spa session at the same time, and my parents immediately canceled dinner. It wouldn't be meaningful without Lauren. I smiled, congratulated her, and that night, quietly bought myself a small cake to enjoy alone with an old movie. It happened so often that I stopped being surprised. Yet deep down, a small part of me always wished that just once, my parents would truly see me, not just Lauren's shadow. Recently, Lauren started an internship program in Los Angeles. My parents emptied their savings to rent her an apartment that matches her style near downtown. When Mom proudly described the Italian silk sofa and walnut dining table they'd furnished for her, I simply pressed my lips together. The desk in my room was so old that every time I typed hard, the drawer would slide open on its own. One evening, as I wrapped up a client's design project, Mom knocked on my door. Her eyes showed a flicker of hesitation, but her voice carried the same practiced calmness. "Charlotte, Lauren asked me to talk to you. Can you let her borrow your computer for a while? She needs it urgently for video rendering in Los Angeles, but her own machine isn't powerful enough." I froze, my fingers hovering above the keyboard. "Are you talking about the PC I spent 3 years saving up for?" "Well, you still have your laptop, right? Your sister really needs it. You're just doing small design stuff, so the laptop should be fine for now." Mom spoke so casually, as if it was no big deal. I tried to stay calm, though my heart pounded in my chest. Do you even realize how heavy design software runs on my laptop? That computer is how I make a living, not some decorative item. Charlotte, Mom sighed. Lauren has more opportunities. She's building her future while you're still living here, freelancing. You should be flexible, know how to sacrifice for the family. At that moment, I wanted to laugh out loud. Sacrifice for the family? Or sacrifice so Lauren could keep living in her fantasy where everything belonged to her. I said nothing more. But that night, I sat in front of my PC for a long time, running my fingers along its edges, as if afraid that if I looked away for a second, it would be reclaimed for family needs. Lauren never asked me directly. She knew all she had to do was complain to our parents and they would handle it for her. That suffocating dynamic was what drained me the most. I came to a cold realization. To my parents, I was the spare tool. When needed, they'd take whatever I valued, as long as Lauren got what she wanted. And this time, I knew it wouldn't stop at a simple, "Can she borrow it?" That Saturday afternoon felt like any other. I had just finished the final design for a regular client, relieved at the thought of relaxing a bit that evening. I planned to power up my PC for a few games with friends, a well-earned reward after a tiring work week. But when I walked into my room, I froze. The desk was empty. My beloved PC, monitor, keyboard, even the gaming chair I had saved up for months, gone. The silence was deafening. I stood motionless for a few seconds, my mind spinning through possibilities. Robbery? But the windows were shut, everything else in place. Or was it my parents? My heart sank as I rushed downstairs. There they were, sitting at the dining table, sipping tea, chatting as if nothing had happened. Mom raised her cup to her lips, glancing at me with that familiar indifference. Dad flipped through a furniture catalog, his face disturbingly calm. "Where's my computer?" I asked, trying to keep my voice steady. "Oh, we sold it," Mom said casually, like I'd asked about an old iron they gave to a neighbor. I couldn't believe my ears. "Mom? Say that again? Sold what?" Dad set the flyer down with a sigh. Lauren needed money urgently for her graduation exhibition. We discussed it as a family. That computer was just sitting there for games and small projects, while Lauren is building her future. We had to prioritize what matters more. I stood, frozen. Do you have any idea how long it took me to save up for that PC? I worked from morning till midnight. Every single dollar went into building it. It's not a toy. It's my work tool, my real job. You're overreacting, Charlotte. Mom frowned. It's just a computer. You still have your old laptop. You can manage, for now. I clenched my fists, anger and hurt rising in my throat. Did you even ask me? Or is it that whenever Lauren frowns, the entire world must step aside? Dad growled. We're family, Charlotte. Family means sacrificing for each other. You mean I have to sacrifice for Lauren, yet Lauren never has to give up anything. I snapped, years of bottled-up frustration finally breaking loose. Right then, the sound of heels echoed through the hallway. Lauren strolled in, holding a brand new dress, happily showing it off online, claiming she'd be the star of the exhibition night. Oh, you're back. Lauren glanced at me, her smug smile unhidden. Thanks, by the way. Mom said your computer sold for more than expected. What a lucky break, right? I stared at her. Lucky? You're standing on my hard work and dare to call it lucky? She shrugged, her tone flat. Come on, Charlotte. It's just a computer. You're so good at what you do, you'll build another one soon enough. I can't afford to miss this opportunity. Opportunity? I scoffed. So I'm supposed to throw away 3 years of savings just so you can look pretty on stage? Ha! Mom cut in, visibly annoyed. That's enough, Charlotte. Stop being selfish. You're the older sister. You should think about your sibling. Lauren's success is the family's pride. Why can't you understand something so simple? I looked at the three of them, feeling an overwhelming sense of detachment. At that moment, I realized one thing. In my parents' eyes, my value was whatever they could cash in when Lauren needed something. No apology, no remorse. Lauren casually turned away, still chattering about makeup plans for the upcoming event. My parents resumed their tea, as if our confrontation had never happened. I stood there, frozen, in the house I once called home. But inside, only one thought remained. This won't end quietly. That entire night, sleep eluded me. The anger simmered beneath the surface, but what kept me awake was the chilling clarity. I could no longer wait for decency from people who had grown comfortable trampling over my efforts. If I stayed silent this time, they'd do it again, and again, always wrapping it in the polished excuse of family. No, not anymore. I got out of bed, powered up my aging laptop. It took nearly 30 seconds to boot, the dim screen almost mocking me. But I didn't care. That night, I opened every old folder, digging out receipts for every component, every photo of the build process I'd poured months into. I even kept transaction records from freelance gigs. The projects that paid for my graphics card, processor, every single cooling fan, all of it. Undeniable proof. By 1 a.m., with every document printed and laid out before me, I exhaled slowly. This was no longer about reclaiming a machine. This was about reclaiming respect and my right to live on my own terms. The next morning, I waited until the family gathered for breakfast. Dad with his newspaper, Mom scrolling through her phone, Lauren preening before a mirror. None of them spared me a glance. But this time, I refused to be invisible. I wanted talk. Those 5 words cut through the air, silencing the room instantly. Dad looked up first, irritation clear on his face. Still on about that computer? Charlotte, how long do you plan to make a scene? I placed the stack of papers on the table, deliberately, firmly. This isn't about making a scene, Dad. This is about fairness and legality. Mom's forced smile faltered. Charlotte, are you seriously turning this into a big deal? Your family doesn't nitpick like outsiders. Outsiders? I let out a sharp laugh. Yet you sold my personal property like it was an old chair. Just because Lauren wanted to shine at some exhibition. No permission, no discussion. So tell me, who's really treating me like an outsider here? Dad growled again. You live under this roof, everything here belongs to the family. I lifted my head, locking eyes with him. Wrong. These are invoices showing I paid for every part from my own account. This is proof of my freelance income, the money I earned through that PC. And this, I pushed the final document toward him, is a copy of the transaction where you sold my computer to a stranger for $1,200. Lauren flicked her hand dismissively, her tone dripping with sarcasm. You're making such a fuss over a few bucks, it's pathetic. I turned to her, meeting her gaze. It's not about a few bucks, Lauren. It's about hard work, about the value of labor. But you wouldn't understand that since you've lived your whole life off other people's sacrifices and had the nerve to call it privilege. Dad slammed his hand on the table, making the teacup tremble. Enough! What do you want? Speak, clearly. I didn't blink. Very simple. You will return to me $1,200 in cash by the end of this week. If not, I'll proceed with filing a claim for misappropriation of personal property. And if you want to go to court, I have all the evidence. Mom's face turned pale as she glanced at Dad, clearly flustered. Charlotte, do you really want to sue your own parents? I gave a cold smile. I want you to look me in the eye and understand that I'm no longer the child you can bully. I don't live for anyone's false pride. Lauren crossed her arms, her tone dripping with disdain. You're tearing this family apart, Charlotte. I answered with a calm smile. No, Lauren, This family has been broken for a long time. I'm just making sure I don't get dragged down with it." The kitchen fell into a heavy silence. I knew they weren't used to being cornered. They were used to giving orders, used to me quietly accepting. But not this time. "We'll pay," Dad said, his voice dropping as he swallowed his anger. "But from now on, don't expect any help from this family." I looked him straight in the eye and replied firmly, "I've never received any help from you." I stood up, gathered the stack of documents, and walked away from the table, feeling a little lighter. This was just the first step. But for the first time in years, I reclaimed my voice. I thought that after that confrontation, things would settle down. But I underestimated my parents' pride and stubbornness. For the next week, the air in the house was suffocatingly thick. Dad said nothing, but his heavy gaze followed me like I was both a traitor and a disgrace. Mom kept repeating, "You've broken my heart, Charlotte," between long, exhausting sighs that filled the house with passive-aggressive guilt. As for Lauren, she was unfazed. She kept flaunting her new dress fittings and exhibition prep on social media, along with her typical "grateful for my supportive family" captions. I could only laugh bitterly. Everything I worked for, every ounce of effort, was now neatly packaged under the label of silent sacrifice, as if I should be proud of being exploited. I wasn't waiting for an apology anymore. What I wanted now was simply to reclaim what was rightfully mine. That Friday afternoon, when I got home, Mom called me over, holding a thick envelope. Dad sat at the table, his face like stone. "This is your money," Mom said flatly. "Exactly $1,200. We're giving it back to you, as you demanded." I stared at the envelope, not reaching for it immediately. I wanted to engrave this moment in my memory. The first time my parents were forced to pay the price for their contempt toward me. "Thank you," I said, keeping my tone steady. "You should know," Dad added. "Everything in this house belongs to us, from these walls to that table. If you want something to be yours, you'll have to build it yourself." I nodded. "That's exactly what I'm doing, Dad." With the envelope in hand, I turned and walked away, leaving behind their angry, helpless stares. Maybe, in that fleeting moment, they realized I was no longer the easily bullied Charlotte they knew. That very evening, I reached out to the person who had bought my PC. Fortunately, he was a decent man, or at least fair. "I've kept the machine in perfect condition," he said over the phone. Honestly, when I got it for that price, I figured something was off. Now that I know, I get it. "You want it back, right?" "For exactly $1,200, I replied firmly. "All right. I don't intend to profit from someone else's misfortune." We arranged to meet at a small cafe downtown. When I placed the cash on the table, he slid my familiar PC tower back to me, carefully packed in its old box. As my hand touched the cold metal casing, it felt like I was reclaiming a piece of my dignity. Not because of its monetary value, but because it symbolized the persistence and effort that had been so carelessly trampled. On the way home, I smiled quietly to myself. That PC was more than just a work tool. It was my answer to my parents. I am not a disposable sacrifice for Lauren's sake. When I had brought the PC back, my parents saw it, but neither said a word. Lauren passed by with a disdainful glance, muttering, "You really know how to put on a show." I just smirked, not bothering to reply. That night, I powered up the machine. The hum of the cooling fans was as smooth as if nothing had ever happened. The screen lit up, familiar applications loading one by one, as if welcoming me back to myself. But I knew this story wasn't over. My family wouldn't change just because they returned the money once. And for the first time, I began seriously considering walking away for good. Getting my PC back, I thought my heart would feel lighter, but the suffocating air in this house never really left. Every scrutinizing glance from Mom, every cold sigh from Dad, and every time Lauren deliberately ignored me felt like tiny knives. quiet but cutting deep. I realized it wasn't the computer I needed to reclaim. It was my space to live, my right to breathe in an environment that respected my worth. That night, I opened my laptop and typed, "Studio apartments for rent in Seattle." I wasn't rich, I didn't have extra savings, but I still had my skills, my work ethic, and most importantly, my self-respect. I'd rather live in a cramped room of my own than survive in a house that treated me as a backup sacrifice. After nearly 3 hours of scrolling through countless listings, I stopped at a small studio on Maple Avenue. Barely 30 square meters, white walls, old wooden floors but clean. And most importantly, the rent was within what I could manage from my freelance work. I called the landlord that very night. Her name was Doris, a widow in her 60s with a warm yet firm voice. "This place is small, young lady. No balcony either," she said, with a hint of sympathy. "I don't need a balcony, ma'am. I just need a place to start over." She paused for a few seconds, then agreed to meet me the next morning. Right after the call, I reopened my client list, sending out emails for collaborations, updating my portfolio on freelance platforms, even posting job offers in design community groups. I wasn't waiting for miracles. Freedom comes at a price, and I had to pay it myself. At the same time, I scheduled a comeback for my stream channel. Streaming had always been a joy, a way to connect with people who genuinely appreciated me. Now, it was also a potential income source to cover upcoming expenses. In the following days, I began planning my move. Quietly, without drama, just small trips, a little at a time. I packed my belongings into backpacks, old cardboard boxes, pretending to be reorganizing my room to avoid Mom's prying eyes. Each night, after the house had fallen asleep, I quietly moved boxes to my best friend Emily's place, someone who had always stood by me. "Are you sure about this, Charlotte? Handling everything alone won't be easy," Emily asked as I carried another box into her living room. "I know. But I'd rather be tired from living true to myself than comfortable in a gilded cage." Emily said no more, simply helping me clear space. During the day, I buried myself in design work. At night, I streamed. Even if my viewership was still small, it was enough to feel their support. For the first time in a long while, I felt like I was walking my own path. Difficult, but honest and mine. As for my family, nothing changed. Mom started noticing empty spaces on shelves, missing items from my room, but she never asked. Dad quietly flipped through his newspaper, acting as if I no longer existed. Maureen occasionally threw me mocking glances, but I no longer cared. My silence was no longer submission, it was a declaration that their opinions held no weight over me. That weekend, I signed the lease. Holding the keys in my hand felt like cutting an invisible chain that had bound me for years. The apartment was small, but every corner, every window was mine. No one else had the right to decide for me anymore. The night before moving out, I left a small note on the dining table. "Thank you for teaching me the value of myself. I won't trouble this family any longer." I didn't expect them to stop me or feel regret. Silence would be their answer. When I left that house, no one saw me to the door. Not long after, I thought I had escaped their orbit. But people like my mother and Lauren don't accept losing control easily. They didn't lash out openly. Instead, their attacks were more subtle, more insidious. I realized this when, one day, my email kept alerting me of failed login attempts. My freelance platform account was nearly locked due to continuous reset attempts. Luckily, I noticed in time and enabled two-factor authentication. At first, I thought it was a bored hacker, but when I traced the unfamiliar IP address back to my old neighborhood, everything became disturbingly clear. My family couldn't stand the fact that I left without their permission. To them, my silence was a public insult. And this was their way of retaliating, silent sabotage, hoping I'd crawl back to beg for forgiveness. I didn't confront them. That's what they wanted, for me to lose my temper. I wouldn't give them that privilege. Instead, I worked harder. My design projects gained momentum. A small company in Portland even offered a long-term collaboration. My stream channel, though still modest, was steadily growing. These people didn't care whose daughter I was. They cared about what I could do. One afternoon, while shopping at the supermarket, I happened to run into Mrs. Peterson, one of my mother's former co-workers. She recognized me from afar and called out warmly, "Charlotte, how have you been? I heard you've moved out on your own. Your mother keeps complaining at work." I smiled politely, but Mrs. Peterson wasn't the type to stop there. "You know, your parents are really stressed these days. They're scrambling to manage everything because of Lauren. That exhibition drained a ton of money from them. Someone said they even mortgaged the land out in the suburbs." My heart skipped a beat. That piece of land was supposed to be my father's retirement safety net. I always thought if things got tough, our family would still have that fallback, but in reality, it had been burned away on frivolous pursuits. And of course, no one told me. "I'm just telling you so you understand, not to criticize. Your mother has always been so proud that Lauren has star potential. But shining is expensive, you know," Mrs. Peterson said with a wistful smile. "And in the end, it's always the family who pays the price." That sentence echoed in my mind all the way home. I didn't feel satisfied. Just a cold confirmation. My parents would rather gamble their own future than admit they were wrong to belittle me. That night, I received a message from Lauren. Not her usual cheap sarcasm, but a screenshot, a maxed-out credit card bill, with a casual question attached. "Can you give us a hand? After all, it's a family matter." The phrase, "give us a hand," was so laughably condescending, as if I were some emergency ATM ready to dispense cash at their whim. I didn't reply. But this time, instead of silently enduring, I forwarded the bill straight into the family group chat, adding only one sentence. "This is the consequence of indulging greed and pride. Don't expect me to pay for choices I was never given." That was it. No long explanations, no drawn-out scolding. The silence on their end lasted longer than I expected. For the entire next day, not a single message from Mom, Dad, or Lauren. They weren't used to me setting such clear boundaries. As for me, for the first time in years, I truly felt in control of the narrative. They could keep floundering in the whirlpool they created. I was no longer the one standing there, waiting to be accepted. I knew that message would hit their egos like a slap. And I also knew they wouldn't stay quiet for long. 3 days later, my phone rang. Not Mom. Not Lauren. Dad. I let it ring until it stopped. A minute later, my screen flashed. 3 missed calls. Then came a flood of texts, each one more forceful than the last. "What childish game are you playing? Family is a place to return to, not something to disrespect like this. If you still have any shred of decency, come back and fix your mistake." I sat still, watching each line appear, with no intention of responding. What surprised me most was Lauren joining in. "You think you're so special, huh? The world isn't going to roll out a red carpet for stubborn brats like you. You'll come crawling back eventually. You just don't see it yet." Clearly, they still didn't understand. It's not that I don't know how to bow my head, but this time, I chose not to. That evening, as the messages kept pouring in, I decided to do what I should have done long ago. I typed a single message, sent to the family group chat. "I'm not coming back. I've spent years trying to be respected, trying to be heard, but all I ever got in return was being trampled and manipulated. Family isn't supposed to measure love by blind sacrifice for one person. If you want to cling to the image of a good daughter, that Charlotte no longer exists. Stop contacting me. This is my final request." I hit send and waited. Not long after, my phone vibrated. A message from Mom. "You're destroying this family, Charlotte. One day when you fail out there, you'll realize only family accepts you. But when that time comes, "Don't expect this house to welcome you back." I read every word, feeling like I was listening to the same tired song they'd been singing for years. Only this time, it didn't sting. I felt relieved, so light that even I was surprised. No more anger, no more hope to be understood, only a sense of peace, knowing I had finally drawn a clear boundary. I opened my contacts. My finger tapped one by one on Mom, Dad, Lauren. Like 3 simple taps, but to me, it felt like 3 chains had just been cut. I sat quietly in my small apartment, soft light streaming through the window, casting gentle patterns on the old wooden floor. No noise, no tears, just the quiet peace of someone who had taken back control of her own life. That evening, I turned on my PC, getting ready for my usual live stream. But instead of jumping straight into gaming, I took a few minutes to talk to my viewers about the decision I had made today. No long-winded explanations, no complaints, just the story of someone learning to cut off toxic control disguised as family. The response from my viewers surprised me. Words of encouragement, shared experiences from others flooded in, making me realize I wasn't alone in this quiet battle. For the first time, I felt a genuine connection, not through blood but through empathy, from people who understood. Love should never mean possession. When the stream ended, I shut down the PC and leaned back in my chair. And out there, my parents' and Lauren's lives would go on the same way, trapped in cycles of pride, illusion, and blind indulgence. But as for me, I had turned a new page, a chapter where I no longer lived to please anyone, no longer needed to prove my worth to those who refused to see it. I knew the road ahead wouldn't be easy, but at least now, I had the right to choose my own path. I don't remember the exact moment I truly let go of my expectations for my family. It wasn't a big shock, not a final insult. It was a quiet process, so subtle that even I didn't notice I had stopped waiting. I only knew that one day, when the silence from my phone no longer made my chest tighten, I had truly stepped out of their shadow. And from that moment, I started living a different life. Not a new life. It had always been mine. But now, I was allowed to claim it. My freelance work slowly found its rhythm. The first clients returned, bringing friends and colleagues. A small studio in Tacoma even offered me a long-term collaboration to design their new brand identity. My income wasn't stable yet, but every dollar earned through my skills and effort felt more rewarding than any allowance I had ever received. At the same time, my stream unexpectedly caught the attention of a small indie gaming community. I wasn't a famous streamer, nor was I flashy or gimmicky, but my persistence, honesty, and willingness to share my failures drew people in. Someone messaged me privately, "Charlotte, watching your streams makes me feel less alone. Thank you for daring to be real." Those simple words were worth more to me than every fake "we're proud of you" my family had ever said. Strangely, when I stopped craving recognition from my relatives, I started being respected more by complete strangers. I poured my time and heart into projects, interspersed with regular streams. The small studio apartment slowly transformed into my creative space. Every corner reflected the real Charlotte. Modest, intentional, but filled with hard work. Some nights, in the quiet, I'd ask myself, I used to think happiness meant having a family who acknowledged me. But maybe peace comes from walking away from the wrong expectation. A simple truth that took me 24 years to accept. I was never truly alone. I had just mistaken being related for being on my side. A month after moving out, I received an invitation to speak at a content creation workshop for young female streamers. The invitation came from Mia Reynolds, a veteran streamer who had overcome a toxic family background just like me. She said she had been following my channel and wanted me to share my story. Not about family drama, but about the journey of rebuilding oneself from zero. I hesitated. Standing in front of people, talking about myself and old wounds was never easy. But then I realized, This wasn't Charlotte's sad story anymore. It was a real experience, proof that we can build a good life without sacrificing our self-respect. At the workshop, I stood on a small stage. The spotlight wasn't blinding, but the eyes of the young audience below shone with a strange brightness. I talked about my first PC, the countless hours of work just to buy one component. And the moment I realized I didn't need to prove my worth to people who had already chosen to deny it, I didn't sugarcoat anything. I didn't paint myself as a victim. I simply said, slowly, that everyone has the right to define their own limits. When I finished, the room applauded, not loudly but sincerely. Mia walked up, took my hand and whispered, "I know, when you sent that message, I'm not coming back. It felt like you were pulling all the air out of your lungs. But you see now, you're breathing deeper than ever." I smiled. And it was true. They were no longer the center of my universe. Now, every day I wake up, I know exactly what I'm living for, who I'm working for. Not to please someone else's inflated ego, but to stay true to my own values. No more expectation, only choices. And I chose myself. That fall, I stopped counting the calls from my family. I no longer dreamed of a day when Mom would apologize or Dad would finally see me as an adult. Lauren stayed the same. Glamorous on social media, flaunting things I knew were bought on mounting debts. But the difference was, this time, I felt nothing. No jealousy, no frustration. Simply, not my concern. I wasn't wildly successful by their standards. I wasn't rich, not famous, but I had a small, cozy apartment, a job that allowed me to live decently, and a small community that genuinely appreciated what I created. I even planted a few pots by my window, a luxury I once thought I didn't have time for. Every morning, I'd brew a cup of coffee, start my work, and by evening, chat with a few friends in the industry. A simple life, but for the first time, I truly felt what peace meant. One day, while cleaning out old emails, I stumbled upon the very first message I had ever sent to a freelance client. Filled with hesitation, lacking confidence, meticulously overdone to the point of being almost naive. I laughed. That version of Charlotte could never have imagined living this kind of free life. And in that moment, I realized I had never been discarded by my family. They simply never knew how to love me the right way. But it was me, all these years, who had handed over my own value to them. Walking away, cutting ties, it wasn't rebellion. It was the first act of learning to protect myself. That's all. No hatred, no need for forgiveness. Just, everyone has their own way of living. That afternoon, I sat in my sunlit room and opened an unannounced live stream. No script, no elaborate prep. I just wanted to turn on the camera and share with the people who had quietly walked this journey with me. I talked about the first time I dared to say no, about the feeling of putting an end to false expectations, and about the journey of learning to respect myself. No applause, no roaring cheers. But the comments poured in. "You made me feel braver. Thank you for not sugarcoating the pain, but simply living honestly." That's right. Freedom isn't the absence of hurt, but no longer letting it control you. I smiled. Turns out, the most precious thing I gained from all those struggles wasn't recognition, wasn't victory. It was the feeling of living a life that is truly mine, calm, fulfilling, and free. Charlotte's story isn't a family tragedy. It's the journey of someone brave enough to escape the spiral of imposed expectations. Amidst all the for the family pressures, Charlotte chose to protect her own worth, to live true to her passion and real abilities. In real life, many people are still trapped in that invisible cage. But this story reminds us, freedom isn't rebellion. It's when we dare to set boundaries and walk our own path. What do you think of Charlotte's choice? Is walking away from a toxic family selfish? Or is it a way to protect yourself? Leave your thoughts in the comments below and don't forget to follow the channel for more meaningful stories about family and life.